So I'm going to talk about the ethnography of installation. This is what I did for my PhD. So I looked at central heating installers and how they shape the energy consumed through domestic central heating systems. And for this I used ethnography, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. In the presentation I will discuss what ethnography is, when it might be appropriate to use ethnography, and how my ethnographic investigation proceeded. And hopefully there'll be some lessons in that should anybody want to pursue ethnography in the future. And then I'll finish with a piece of example data, so an ethnographic vignette from one of my observations. Okay, so what is ethnography? It's a method that's grounded in anthropology, so it's about understanding people, and it's an approach whereby the researcher participates in people's lives for an extended period of time. In that they watch what happens, listen to what is said, ask questions through informal interviews, collect documents and artefacts, and gather whatever data are available to throw light on the issues that are under inquiry. So we're basically trying to understand a culture, a group, what they do, how they do it, how those ideas are kind of reproduced within that group, and what that means, in my case, for energy in buildings. Okay, so why did I use ethnography? To look at heating installers. Approximately 60% of household energy consumption is through space heating. And so far, from a policy perspective, strategies to try and influence this have focused on the technical aspects of either the heating systems, so condensing boilers, advanced heating controls, or they've looked at the end users, so trying to encourage people to turn their thermostats down, for example, and use their heating in particular ways. The problem with both of these approaches is that so far we haven't achieved the reductions necessary to meet the government's 2050 carbon targets. So the whole point of my PhD was to say, okay, well, is there another way that we could look at this problem? Is there something else going on that's shaping, constructing the use of heat in homes? Or is there somebody else involved in this? And for me, it was the people tasked with installing and explaining these systems, so heating engineers. And these actors have been recognised previously as potentially influential, but there's only been a couple of pieces of work that have actually engaged them in any capacity at all. So the whole point of my work was to go and see actually what they were doing. So from this, I had a research question. How do heating engineers and installation practices shape the energy consumed through domestic central heating systems? So this is an open-ended research question. It's kind of saying, well, okay, we don't know much about these people. How can we find out what they're doing? And for that, I thought that ethnography was the most appropriate way to investigate. So, when is this approach useful? When we don't know very much. So, if there's a scarcity of existing information on a particular group or thing, then we need an approach that allows us to just go and see, to just go and find out what's going on in that capacity. So we didn't know very much about heating engineers. When else is it useful? When we need to remain open. So we don't go into the field going, okay, I know what I'm looking at here, I know what heating engineers do, it's fine. Instead, we go in and say, we don't know this. What we're going to do is go and find out. Okay? So the whole point of the research question is that it was open. It asked, how do heating engineers shape this thing? We don't know. I didn't go in and say, okay, I need to look specifically at what they do at this point in time, because I didn't know that. We didn't know at the time. So remaining open. And thirdly, when we need to observe things in the field, so when it's really useful to actually go and see. So this is all based on the idea that what people do and how they act is shaped by the environments that they're in, what they're interacting with, who they're interacting with. And actually, it can be much more effective to go out into those places and see what they're doing at that time, what's happening, in order to gather information about it. So those are when ethnography might be useful. Okay, we're whipping through this. Just let me know if it's too fast or we need to kind of touch on some stuff again. How does an ethnographic investigation proceed? So now I'm going to talk through how I went about my ethnography of heating engineers. And the first part of that is accessing participants, so actually getting out into the field. How do you do that? And with ethnography that can vary, so the important thing to say as well is that ethnography can look very different depending on who it is you're investigating what group, what environment. So if it's an organisation, you might go and spend time in that organisation. If it's a tribe in a particular country, you might go to that country and spend time with that tribe. In my case, it was heating engineers. And they're quite difficult to access. So what I did is I used a snowball sampling approach. So I communicated with people. I went out face to face. I met people. I spent time at industry events, training sessions. And through those, I made contacts. And then I said, okay, well, can you put me in touch with somebody that might be able to help? And so what this is, the ones in the boxes are the actual fieldwork experiences that I acquired. And the ones without boxes are points of contact. So what I've said here is, okay, well, I went to an industry event. At that event, I met Merchant B, who then put me in touch with some other people in his organisation. Then I could go and observe. From there, I met a bunch of people. So I was in the merchants and I was kind of meeting people and saying, okay, will you help me with my fieldwork? Can I come and spend some time with you? Yeah, absolutely. And then from there, it carried on. The point being, it's quite messy. So I didn't have this linear chain. I didn't have a single organisation where I could sit in an office all day. I had to go out to all these different places and communicate with people in order to get access. So, okay, that's important, and it can vary depending on your ethnography. Second thing, collecting data. So when I was actually there in the field, what did I do? And again, this is something that can vary massively with ethnography depending on what is appropriate for the case under study. So for me, it was interviewing heating engineers in different settings. It was observing them at training sessions and taking part in those sessions. It was spending time in plumbers merchants. It was going to industry events. And it was observing heating engineers that did fit heating systems in homes. So in all of those things, what was I actually doing? So when you're there, you're not just kind of stood like a lump, you're doing stuff, right? So I was taking field notes, I was writing stuff down, I was drawing floor plans about not just what the people were saying, but what they were doing. What was the surrounding environment? Where was the system going? Why was it going there? I was taking photographs, so collecting these documents that evidence what's happened. Collecting audio as well, so I asked people if it was okay to record what they were saying. When I was doing an interview, semi-structured interview, I would record that as well, and then transcribe it verbatim afterwards. In the case of field notes, it's worth saying that what you can actually achieve when you're in the field is really dependent on where you are and who you're with and what's happening. So people might say, I don't want you to make notes right now, I really don't. And you might go, oh, well that means I can't collect any data, that's terrifying, I'm not going to remember anything that you've done. It's not the case, but what you have to do is kind of adapt to the situation and say, well fine, I'm not going to take notes, but what I'll do is go back and write up as much as I can remember as soon as I get the chance to do so. So this is what happens here. You sit and type for a really long time. It's not that much fun, but basically what I would do if I had one day in the field, for example, is I'd come home in the evening and the next day and sit and type up that day from start to finish, as much as I could remember, whatever the conversations were. The whole point here as well is that ethnography is an emergent process. So because I didn't have predefined ideas of what I was looking for, instead I just wrote down everything, and then at the end of it I went through it all and went, oh okay, this is what's going on. Okay, there's some emerging themes and ideas here, and that's been said several times now. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on this because it's quite important. Collecting data, so being in the field as well, this one at the beginning. The kind of kit, that's the stuff that I would take with me. So notebooks in order to write notes, equipment in order to record audio, stuff to take pictures with, and mobile phones. That was really important because another aspect of this is risk assessments, your own safety in the field. I went and did this as a lone researcher, which as a PhD student is quite likely if you're going out into the field. How are you thinking about yourself and your safety in those environments? So for me, I would go out and a lot of the time I didn't know where I was going. I would meet a heating engineer, we'd hop in his van and we'd go to wherever he was working that day. We'd move around different properties, we were in private homes, sometimes the homeowner wasn't there, sometimes they were. So how does anyone know where I am, what I'm doing? Is that okay? Something to think about. And what I did, I had a call buddy system, so I communicated with people, my supervisor, other colleagues, and said, okay, I'm here right now. 20 minutes later, I'm still okay, or you know, I haven't been in touch for 2 hours, now the alarm bells need to start ringing. So that was the kind of thing that we did. Informed consent, letting your participants know what you're doing. Again, that can be really tricky. The ethical implications of this particular method are quite difficult because sometimes people can, it's not always explicit that you're conducting research. You might be in a really informal environment and kind of saying, just having a conversation. And how does somebody know that that's research and that their data is then going to be used within a wider context? So some really interesting stuff to think about in terms of actually doing ethnography, and that can vary depending on where you're doing it and who it's with. Okay, finally, what do you do with the data? Analyse it. Now what's really important here, so data is, the whole thing is emergent, so it's coming through as you continue through the process. And formally, analysis starts to take shape in the analytic notes and memoranda. So informally, it's embodied in the ethnographer's ideas and hunches. And in these ways, to one degree or another, the analysis of data feeds into research design and data collection. So this is one of the really tricky things, is explaining how you've analysed this data, because it comes down to things that you just know. You've seen it so many times, you know this is important. Or it's coming through, and then you formally go through the process and you're like, okay, yeah, there it is. There's the things that are really essential here. And it's quite hard to describe that, and as you weave back and forth between the data and some theoretical ideas as well, and your ideas, they develop and grow through that process. So it's sort of like this. You have some fieldwork, some literature and analysis, a bit more, and then you kind of pop out a thesis at the end. It's not at all. It's like that. It's really messy and quite hard. So that's something to bear in mind. Okay, I'm going to just finish with an ethnographic vignette. So this is an example of the type of data you might collect if you're doing some ethnography. I'm going to have to read. It's not too long, so I won't be very long. Okay. So yeah, I was looking at heating installation, so the pictures aren't the most exciting. Sorry. But here we go. I want to take you into an occupied property where the final stages of a boiler replacement were taking place. A heating engineer had fit the boiler the previous day, and on this particular morning an electrician, John, had come in to fit the controls. The boiler was in an upstairs bedroom where John was completing some wiring. He'd been stripping the individual wires coming from a cable within the boiler, ready to wire up the programmer's there. So John started to position the backplate for the programmer when he said he'd better just check that this is where they want it. He went downstairs to get the householder. When he was down there, I heard him ask the householder whether they wanted the controls hiding, and asked them to come upstairs so he could show them. He positioned the programmer right underneath the boiler on the left-hand side. It was very close to the boiler and pipework. There was also a large wardrobe to the left of it. The customer said that the programme would be great in that position and that it would be good hidden. So here we have some communication between the installer and the householder happening to determine the location of the controls. I've picked up on this example because there's evidence to suggest that the location of controls may influence their use, particularly if they're difficult to access. I think the language here, referring to the programmer being hidden, is hugely revealing about how they may be used. So to unpick this further, I want to discuss what happened about half an hour later when John was downstairs, finishing off wiring the thermostat. So at this point, we were next to the living room where the householder was. John popped his head around the door and asked if he could just explain what he'd done and show her the controls. We went to the bedroom where John first went through the operation of the boiler. He then moved on to the programmer, stating, "Okay, I don't know if you're going to use it, a lot of people are not bothering, but I'll run you through it." So John went through a systematic process of explaining how to set on and off times on the programmer and demonstrating by pressing the relevant buttons. After this, the householder said, "So for now, it's just on. It's not got a set time so I can do it?" John replied, "No, actually, if we want to do it that way, what we'll do is leave it on continuous and we'll work on the thermostat." He went on to say, "I mean, there's no reason why you can't. I don't use my timer. We got used to it when my boys were babies. We still do it now, and there's actually a new thinking that it's supposed to be more energy efficient, which is keeping the fabric of the building ticking over. So they recommend that you turn it down to 15 minimum, and when you want full use, turn it back up again. But I tell you, I've been doing this a long time. These ideas go backwards and forwards." He went on to say, "You know the building, you know the house. You've got double glazing, but keep an eye on your bills. Just be sensible. Don't have the heating on and the windows open. Keep the heat in and cold out. That's what we want to do." So in this moment, although the installer encourages the householder not to open the windows when the system is in use, he set the programme into continuous and suggested that operating the heating system via the thermostat is what works for him and is, according to new thinking, the most efficient way to operate it. So is there a possibility that the location of the controller, combined with the installer's advice, might encourage the householder to operate the system via the thermostat rather than the programmer? And that's it. There's an example of some data. And the whole point is you can capture stuff in such great detail. Those kind of conversations haven't been captured before between heating engineers and customers. We haven't created this part of the puzzle or worked it out, so that's why ethnography was really valuable in this case. And that's it. I'm done.
I think we probably should say questions in the workshop session.
Yeah. Okay. Argyris?
No questions. Alrighty. I have to say, my presentation couldn't be more different than yours. So I've got loads of graphs. I hope you're ready. I really hope I can keep you awake. So my name is Argyris. I'm a third-year PhD student at Loughborough University, and I've kept the title to the presentation short. It's for funerals and a wedding. Kind of refers to the failures and successes I had. No successes are success, but many failures, and I guess, David, I can probably feel a part of you relating to that work. So I might go over 10 minutes, between 10 and 15, that's okay. So I'll run you through my data set. I will explain my research question. Then I'll briefly go, quite quickly probably, through the methods I've used, the failed methods I used for my first year and second year. And then I'll give you some details on the method I'm working now, which is my almost the end of the third year. And some short conclusions and the future work that needs to be done. There's no time for that anymore, but it's okay. So I've got hourly recorded internal air temperatures from living rooms and bedrooms in about 220 homes in Leicester, UK. All in all, there's 411 spaces. Okay, there's a lot of them. And they come from buildings that are free-floating, and they were recorded for 62 days back in 2009, summer 2009. I know a little bit more about the houses, house type, house age, the wall types, whether or not there was loft insulation, the number of the occupants, the age of the oldest occupant, and the time of the tenure. So what do we do with, I've got this, I mean the data is a lot, it's too much. What do we do with that? There has to be something we can do. And the question that I was asked when I started was, can we use this empirical data to predict future temperatures in these houses during the summertime? And the objectives of the study were to analyze the data, of course. The most important thing, I guess, is to understand the formation, the mechanisms behind the formation of the internal temperatures in homes during summertime always, okay, free-floating homes. And then, if I can, construct statistical models and forecast future temperatures in these houses. So we began with the journey of failures. First year, method 1, I just started. I started on a high, actually, a really high. That means really high correlations between the daily mean internal and the form of the external. Okay, and these high correlations, those that your statistics are probably rust at the back of your mind. If you get a really high correlation, I could base myself on the external, knowing the external, and having a high correlation and that best fit line of the linear regression. I could project that and find out what the daily mean internal temperature is. And the linear regression gives an equation, and if you can relate the intercept and the slope to something that you know about the house, you can then say, okay, this house is detached, therefore I use this intercept and this slope, and I can predict the temperatures inside that house. But of course that was not the case. So intercept, slope, house age, house type, whatever, they don't relate. Scrap that. I'm not going to go deep into that, there's no need, there's the past, it's gone. quite relieved this is done. Second method, similar. I'm basing myself on this kind of high correlation between internal and external was a big thing, so I really had to hold on to that. But obviously, things vague, such as the house type, as the house age, we don't really know what's going on in the house. So I decided to use a subset from some of the work that David has done, and go and use the sub calculations on heat and gains, heat gains to losses ratio, which is more about what's going on inside the house rather than what is the house. And I thought, okay, I might be able to get something here, and then because the heat gains to losses ratio could possibly be a result of the external and the internal and this relationship between them, but I was unlucky again. Really weak trends. Reduced my set, not too bad, but then again using SAP, loads of assumptions, loads of uncertainty. I can't even get a model out of this correlation. So the first year was over and I had nothing. The second year started, and we said, okay, you've got time series data, isn't it? You go consecutive measurements over 62 days, that constitutes time series. Go look at what time series analysis does. It's been there for years and years. So I kind of sort of dig deep and I went for the complicated stuff, the univariate ARIMA. And ARIMA stands for autoregressive integrated moving average. And this is a model that has got like 2-3 parts. The first part is the autoregressive. It captures the past behavior of the series. The moving average sort of captures the random shocks, so you could say that could be the daily swing. And of course there's an error to the model. And when you simplify that, it comes down to the temperature time t equals to some bit to what the temperature was an hour before, 2 hours before, 3 hours, etc., etc. Okay? And I'm plotting the measured in blue, that's a living room, hourly, over 62 days. And in this first bit, I just did a